Hello there and welcome back to the Late Half Hour with Victor show, starring me, Victor. That's right, Victor, the best Victor, the real Victor, and definitely the only Victor you should be listening to. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a fantastic guest coming right up now. It is Mr. L. Jekyll! Welcome to the Late Night Half Hour with Victor show. Yeah, thanks for the invitation. You know, it's really cool to be invited to something. You know, once my one of my best friends had a birthday party and he told me he wasn't even going to be in the country. It is funny, because nobody likes him! No, that wasn't a joke. He really wasn't in the country. Shut up, loser. Now, I hear you have written the greatest book in history, no? Oh, yeah. It's pretty good. And I'm told that you have a special promotion on it right now. Well, today is the final day of the promotion. I'm reading one chapter a day, every day, for 7 days. Let's check it out now. This is Hunters of Hall, and ladies and gentlemen, my name is Victor Bradley, and you're watching the Super Ultra Mega Late Show of Half Hours with me, Victor. That's right, Victor. I'm your host, Victor. Duran was moving with a small troop out in the fields. It was unusually cold out, and the grass was all rotten, yellow, and rough to the touch. You could almost sand down the hardest steels on it. Everyone was keen to get back home. It was bad hunting weather, but direct orders from Stoichko had them all out here scouting. It was a precaution that had to be taken every night to scout for monsters and other tribes. Junior hunters would normally go out in groups of 2, and sometimes took trainees with them, but the daily hunt earlier in the day was weak, and Stoichko needed to send his best to find out where all the game was. The plains were dominated by the Trembor species, because of their mostly grass-based diet and love of sun, and because of their usefulness and rich source of meat, tribes stayed around their environment for as long as they could get away with. Duran was leading the group, with Uldra at his side. Poldo was behind him, and 2 junior hunters tagging along for experience. Today, Poldo whispered to Uldra, who hushed him sharply. The group navigated the fields to where the last sighting of the local Trembor herd was, and looked around for evidence of anything that could explain where they were. Sir, Poldo whispered. It's not me, Uldra responded. This looks like something you would do, sir. Go away, Uldra barked. Duran looked up and frowned at the 2 of them. Something wrong, Al? He queried. We were just discussing how odd this all is. No obvious signs of migration, Uldra remarked. You're right, Duran admitted. The only real explanation is if they were spooked and started stampeding towards Canyonland again. Poldo tapped Uldra on the shoulder, which he was intentionally ignoring. Or something else, Uldra began, before Poldo's constant tapping began to annoy him. Stop it, Poldo, he barked again, before a hail of rocks were thrown at them all. One of the juniors was chiseled right in his chin, sending him into a daze immediately and cracking his jaw. As he fell to the ground, his friend ran over to him and tried to drag him behind the nearest rock formation. Uldra and Duran were able to dodge most of the pot shots, and Poldo took a few in the body. All of them ran for cover. Duran was able to avoid getting hit. Uldra had only been nicked, ripping up a bit of his clothing. Poldo concluded that he sustained no serious damage. Who do you think? He asked meekly. Darks, Uldra huffed. In the name of Lady Psaila, cease this at once! Duran shouted over the hill. Over it, a group of dark warriors paced, each with a loaded sling in their hands, except the lone figure up in the front, standing almost 7 foot tall, with the face of a wolf sprawled across his chest, and the mighty flag that flew proudly over his head. It wasn't just any dark warrior. It was the dark wolf who approached in all his glory. With no sling of his own, the man carried only a jagged blade with a long handle clasped in his offhand. It was designed for two-handed use, but had been modified to look no bigger than a dagger in the giant's hands. "Who comes before me?" he called out. "I am Duran of the Halls," Duran called back. "Duran of the Halls." Renault looked at his followers, who each shrugged. "Never heard of him." "I've heard of your exploits, Dark Wolf. We wish no combat," Duran begged. Aldra frowned at him. The dark forces moved to encircle the halls, picking up any small stones they could find while doing so. "These are dark lands, Duran. I cannot let this investigation go unpunished." He paused. "If you come out, I'll let you off lightly." Renault approached the rock formation where they all hid. "No lands are dark lands, Wolf. These are Preacher's lands. Always have been," Duran said, trying his best to assert himself. "Well then, perhaps it will be coming here to defend its lands," Renault growled. Poldo looked for his knife and then made eye contact with Aldra, who drew the leaf blade, its edge reflecting in the light and blinding Duran a little. He placed his hand over the surface of the leaf blade and looked down on Aldra. It had been reported on many occasions by the independent traders who had come to the tribe from time to time that there was a man fitting Renault's description who would go around bullying smaller tribes, and that nobody could stand up to his might. Duran knew for a fact that Aldra had heard these stories too, but failed to accept them as truth. Unfortunately, even though he was in charge of the operation, the juniors had no say in the matter, and Poldo would always side with Aldra, leaving him at a 2-to-1 disadvantage. "Come out," Renault ordered. Duran looked Aldra dead in the eye and motioned for him to stay put. He rose from his cover, holding his hands out to either side. "Fancy sword you've got there, Duran," said Renault. "I'd bet it's pretty old." He was referring to the short sword Duran carried on his side. "We got one like it back at camp, same horned guard and all. I'd never forget it." "A sword's a sword, Wolf," said Duran. "Renault's the name," he corrected, "and that's the lightning blade." "Never heard of it," Duran responded. "Well, you need not worry about it anymore. It'll be mine in a moment." Looking down at his blade, he recalled all the times he had used it and what it meant to his family. His unborn child would be the next to carry it, not some thug he met only a moment ago. He considered their odds in a fight with Renault. One of the juniors was in no shape to fight, and the other wouldn't last a second against the wolf. Poldo himself would most likely struggle. Aldra may be the only one I can trust to hold his own, Duran thought. Then suddenly, Aldra leapt from behind his rock and slashed one of Renault's slingers, cutting him down where he stood. Another tried to draw his blade on Aldra, but was stabbed in the neck by Poldo before he could unsheath. Nobody had seen how quickly Poldo reached him. "I guess you don't want to make this easy," Renault huffed. "You're next," Aldra exclaimed, before charging in recklessly. Poldo followed behind him. They both swung their blades at Renault, aiming high, but was stopped short. Renault had caught Aldra's blade with his own, and stopped Poldo by grabbing his wrist. Renault scowled at the two of them. There were slight tremors across Aldra and Poldo's bodies. Aldra pulled back. As he did so, Renault took Poldo's hand and threw him across the field. He then marched to Aldra and thrust his weapon hastily, aiming for the chest. On instinct reaction, Aldra tried to swipe his sword away with the leaf blade. The tip of Renault's blade was nicked, cleaning the point from it and knocking it aside. Not noticing the damage to his weapon, Renault reached in and grabbed Aldra's hand with his own. The grip was so tight and painful that Aldra would feel it every time he would draw his blade thereafter. Aldra's first reaction was to try and free his hand with the other, but in doing so he was opened up to the biggest headbutt he had ever received. It had staggered him, sending him back a few feet. He tried to bounce back and take another swipe, but was kicked in the stomach, causing him to fall to the ground. Renault spit a hot ball of saliva in the grass. He waited for the next challenger. Although Poldo had found his feet, the scowl of that man made him far too hesitant to ever run back in. Even for Aldra's sake, this man had not even bothered putting down his flag. The rip across the mouth of his mask betrayed all his confidence. He was not even taking this fight seriously. Poldo and Aldra were chumps to him. Clutching his stomach, Aldra was out for the count. It became apparent to Duran that it was his turn next. Nobody else was in a hurry, and Renol was growing anxious. "Let us leave, and I won't mention it to clan leaders," Duran bargained. "Hand over the sword and you can leave," said Duran as he removed the strap holding the flag to his back and spiked the pointed end in the ground. "It doesn't matter to me which option you take. I'll get it either way." That's all we're going to read today. Thank you very much for coming along to this amazing promotion that we've been doing the last 7 days, and hopefully we'll have something special for you again in the future. Remember to like the page and share it with your friends, and there will be links if you would like to get your very own copy in soft or in hard form. Thank you very much. See you next time.